Okay, good morning. Good morning, everyone. Good Chodesh. Today's daf is sponsored by Binyamin Fleischman in commemoration of the yahrzeit of his father, Shmuel Yudel ben Binyamin Yaakov, Zichron Levracha. Our learning this morning should be our Aliyah for his neshama. Okay, so we left off yesterday that we were talking about this issue of a halacha that if you hit or you make a noise in someone's ear, that you have to pay money, and we said you have to pay a sela, and we were discussing whether a sela medina, or sela tsuri, which would make the difference whether you pay 4 zuz or you're paying a half a zuz, and we're going to see from the story that we're about to say that it is a half a zuz, and also you see from the story we had a machlokas between Rabbi Yossi Aglili, who said that you pay mana, which is 100 zuz, versus paying the sela, which is the either 4 or half a zuz. So, and this is as I said yesterday, I always like this story. Chanan Bisha, so it says Chanan, the bad guy, Takale lahu gavra, so he hit someone in this fashion in his ear. Also, Lakame de Rav Huna, he came in front of Rav Huna. Amrle, Rav Huna said, Zio go havle palga de zuzah. Go give him a half a zuz. So you see that he paskin that it's a half a zuz. It's not a mana and it's not 4 sela or 4 zuz, but it's a half a zuz. So what happened? Chanan Bisha havele zuzam maka. He had like a beat up coin. His zuz was not in good shape. Boy lemeisve lemine palga de zuzah. So he wanted to use that zuz to pay him a half a zuz that he owed him for having hit him. Lohavi mishtakole, but no one would exchange it because it was a beat up coin. So Chanan Bisha had this problem because he had to pay a half a zuz and he only had a full zuz. So takole achrini v'yavin nile. So he hit him in the other side, and then he gave him the whole zuz. So interesting story. Now, just recall, this is obviously not dealing with nezek, because if you think about it, the difference between hitting someone in one ear if you're making him deaf and hitting him in 2 is totally different. But this is talking about boshas, as we talked about yesterday. This is a payment for the embarrassment aspect. Okay. So in any event, goes the Mishnah. Shar shu muad lemino ve'eno muad l'she'eno mino. So you have now a shar that is muad to attack other animals of its type. So I guess other shvarim ve'eno muad l'she'eno mino. But it has not been found muad to a different other types of animals. Now we're going to see exactly. The Gemara is going to discuss machlokas how to read it, but let's just read it the way it's written in our Mishnah, which is the idea that every time it would see an animal of its own type, it would gore it, and any time it would see other animals, it would not gore it. So therefore, he's been established as a muad for animals of its variety, but he's found specifically not to be a muad for animals of a different variety. Or muad la'adam ve'ena muad la'behema, where he has been established as a muad la'adam, that he's multiple times gored a person, but he doesn't gore behemoths when they pass in front of him. So therefore, okay, so that's the second case. Or muad l'katan ve'ena muad l'gedolim, that we found that this animal would attack small animals, but it would not attack big animals. So when it saw big animals, it would leave them alone, but when it saw small animals, it would attack them. So the Mishnah says, Eshu muad lo, for that category that is considered a muad, so like for example, for his own min, or for a person, or for ketanim, mishalim nezek shalim, so for that he would pay nezek shalim because he's a muad. Ve'asheina muad lo, mishalim chatzi nezek, but for that which he is not muad, he would pay chatzi nezek because he's a tam. So therefore, let's say he gored an animal, he gored a human 3 times, but he wasn't goring animals, then all of a sudden he went and gored an animal, even though he's a muad for a man, and if it was a man he'd have to pay nezek shalim, but since it's an animal and he's not muad for an animal, he would only pay chatzi nezek. Okay, now the Mishnah proceeds to something else. Amru l'fnei Rabbi Yehuda, they said in front of Rabbi Yehuda, Hareza muad l'shabbasos ve'ena muad l'chol. We have this animal that gores on Shabbos, but it doesn't gore on the weekday. Now where does this come from? Rashi says that basically because, as we know, you can't work your animals on Shabbos. So when on Shabbos, when he's not in its regular routine, he gets aggressive and he gores. He gets bored. Tosa springs from the Yerushalmi, and there's a lot of very interesting halachic aspects that come out of this, but it brings from the Yerushalmi that because people dress up differently on Shabbos in some fashion, that causes the shor to act that way. Interesting thing, maybe if we have time later we could talk about some of the ramifications of that. But in any event, they came to Rabbi Yehuda and said, we have this shor that is muad to gur on Shabbos, but not during the weekday. Amar lahem, so he said to them, the halacha is Shabbos mishalem nezek shalom. So if he's considered a muad for Shabbos, he pays nezek shalom on Shabbos. So he must mishalem chatzi nezek. But during the weekday, he would only pay chatzi nezek. And the challenge here always is, in other words, how tightly do you define something that is sufficient to say that it's only a subcategory of muad and not a more general muad? We'll get into more detail on this in the Gemara. The Gemara then, the Mishnah finishes, Eimasaihu tam, when does he become a tam? After he's been a muad, Mishayachzerba Gimel Yemei Shabbosos. Once he would go three, in other words, once you establish that he's only muad to gur on Shabbos, you have to have 3 Shabbosos where they show him an animal, or he sees an animal and he doesn't gur. Okay, that's the Mishnah. Zakta Gemara. Itmar Reb Zvid Omer ve'eno muad tanan. Reb Papa Omer eno muad tanan. So difference of one letter, the vav, but it makes a huge difference in how you understand the Mishnah. So the way Reb Zvid would understand the Mishnah is the way we described it. Shar shu muad lemino. It's a factual circumstance. You have a shar that's muad to attack animals of its variety. Ve'eno muad l'she'eno mino. But it is not a muad to attack animals that are not of its variety. So all of this was a factual statement. And what is the implication of that factual statement? Because everything in this Gemara is going to be about implication. The implication of that factual statement is, because it is a muad for its mean, but it has specifically been demonstrated to not be a muad for she'eno mino, in that case, he's a muad only lumino, but not l'she'eno mino. The implication being that in a where you just don't know, you would assume that once he becomes muad for one type, he's muad for all. So according to Reb Zvid, if you have an animal that's muad lemino, it's also muad l'she'eno mino. If you demonstrate that 3 times they brought a she'eno mino in front of him and he didn't gur, then he becomes not muad l'she'eno mino. So what is basically Reb Zvid's concept, the way I think about it, is that you're guilty until proven innocent. Once you become a muad, then you're a muad for everything. Now, if you can demonstrate that for a certain category you're not a muad, so fine, then you can demonstrate that. But absent that, in the default, you would say that he's a muad for all animals. Rav Papa reads the Mishnah differently. He reads it as a psak. It's saying, shar shehu muad lemino, that a shar that is muad for its type, eino muad l'she'eno mino, is not muad for something that is not its type. So what is his opinion is? His opinion is that even when an animal has been demonstrated to be a muad, as relates to other animals, it's innocent until proven guilty, and he would be a tam. So if he's gored 3 of his own type of animals, and then an animal comes that's not its type, and he gores it, he's still a tam, and he would only pay chatzi nezek, because he was demonstrated to be a muad for his own type, but not for any other type. So according to Rav Zvid, it's a case, and according to Rav Papa, it's a halacha, and the difference is, do you say, for the animal types, that it was not found to be a muad, is the default that he's a muad for all animals, which would be the opinion of Rav Zvid, or is the assumption innocent until proven guilty, and he would not be a muad, according to Rav Papa, for anything other than that which has been established to be a muad. Okay, so Rav Zvid Amar ve'eno muad tanan. Rav Zvid, and this is what I just said. Rav Zvid says that when it says ve'eno muad and it's just telling us a case, it's talking about a case where it's been demonstrated not to be a muad for other varieties. Hastama have a muad, but in the ordinary course, the default assumption is that when he's a muad for one, he's a muad for all. Rav Papa says eino muad tanan, that it says eino muad, it was giving us a psak, and it's telling us the stama lo have a muad, that it's not a muad, that when it becomes a muad lemino, it doesn't become a muad l'she'eno mino. Okay, so that's the machlokas. Now, why do they have this machlokas? Rav Zvid daik mi seifa, Rav Papa daik mi reisha. Rav Zvid brings a raya for his view from the seifa, and Rav Papa from the reisha. Rav Zvid daik mi seifa. What's Rav Zvid's raya from the seifa? The ketani, because we learned muad leketanim ve'eno muad legedolim. So we said that if the animal was found to be a muad, that he attacked small animals 3 times, ve'eno muad legedolim, and he did not attack big ones. So I amrit bishlomo ve'eno muad ketani. So it works well. Reb Zvid is saying to us, if we say that it says ve'eno muad. So he was specifically found not to be a muad to gedolim. Hastama have a muad, but the implication being that in the ordinary course, when it gored 3 small ones, it automatically becomes a muad also for the big ones. So then there's a point to the Mishnah. The Mishnah is telling us a chiddush, which is in other words, if the default assumption is that they're guilty until proven innocent, so the Mishnah needed to tell us this halacha to say that once he became a muad for katanim, he becomes a muad legedolim also. Why? Because you would say to yourself, just speaking logically, nothing to do with halacha or anything like that. If an animal has been demonstrated to beat up on little, let's say you have the playground bully, they'll beat up on the little kids, but they're not going to beat up on the big kids, right? So therefore, just because you might think to yourself that just because an animal gores small animals doesn't mean that he would gore a big animal because he's afraid of the big animal. So maybe he's not a muad. So he says, so therefore the Mishnah is telling us, no, the halacha is like every other case. If he becomes a muad for one, he's a muad for another. And even if all he's done is he's gored small animals, he still becomes a muad for the big animals. So according to Rav Zid, there's a point to this halacha. It's telling us that chiddush, that the default assumption that it's a muad extends even where the animals are big, and so far he's only demonstrated that he gores where they're small. But if you're going to say like Rav Papa, Eino Muad Katani, that the Mishnah is stating a fact that if he becomes a muad for Katanim, he becomes a muad for Gedolim. Stama lo have a muad, but in the ordinary course it wouldn't be a muad. Hashta yesh lomer mikatanim lekatanim da'ama stama lo have a muad mikatanim legedolim tzrichel meimar. He says, but then what would be the chiddush in the Mishnah? Because if we know, according to Rav Papa, since Rav Papa told us that if an animal is known to attack its own type of animals, it is not automatically assumed to attack other types of animals, then for sure, where he's only attacked small animals, it's not going to be presumed that he's going to attack big animals, because it's much less of a chiddush to say that he'll attack other types of animals other than his own, and yet he's not automatically a muad from one to the other. Then for sure there's no havamina that he should be a muad from small to large. So what would be the point of the Mishnah saying it? So he said, well, we need to say it. So that's Rav Tzvid's raya. Rav Tzvid's raya is because he says from the sefer, from the case of muad lekatanim and muad legedolim, that according to Rav Papa, there's no chiddush to be had in this Mishnah, because of course he's not muad for gedolim if all he gored was katanim. Rav Papa would answer you and says, no, there's still a chiddush to the Mishnah, because I might have thought hoil paritz bei bahu mina paritz bei loshna gedolim didei v'loshna katanim didei. I might have thought, and remember, this going to Rav Papa who says he's not automatically a muad from one to the other. So he says, I might have thought, once he gored this type of animal, whatever type of animal it was, that it doesn't matter whether it's ketanim or gedolim, he became a muad for both, because he became a muad for that type of animal. Kamash malan delo have a muad. So therefore, the Mishnah was coming to tell us a chiddush, even according to Rav Papa, even though normally we don't learn from one to another. You might have lumped all of this type of animal into one category and said he's a muad both for small and large. So to that, the Mishnah is coming to say, according to Rav Papa, to break it down in detail and say, even in this circumstance, we'll differentiate within one type of animal and say that he's only muad for the small and he's not muad for the large. And even though that is logically, that makes good sense, you wouldn't necessarily have known it, and that's what Rav Papa says is the chiddush in the Mishnah. Okay, so that's Rav Tzvid's reason. Rav Papa dayak mireisha. Rav Papa brings a raya to his, derives his view from the reisha, the ketani, because we learned. Now this is the reisha only relative to the seifa of Rav Tzvid. This is actually the middle case in our Mishnah. That because we learned muad la adam, ena muad la behema. That if someone is muad to a person, then they're not muad to a behema. Now Rashi points out that just logically speaking, it is a much bigger deal to gore a human being than it is to gore a animal. And we actually dealt with this on Daf Beis, because it says Adam Islay Mazel, that a person has mazel, which either means that he has the foresight, the ability to prevent himself from getting damaged by an animal. Alternatively, it means that there's some kind of siyata d'shmaya or something that the people have mazel. But whatever the point is, it's easier. We operate under the assumption it's easier for an animal to gore another animal than it is to gore a person. So in any event, Rav Papa says as follows. I'm sorry? The Rav Papa says as follows. Muad lo adam ain't a muad lo behema. That if someone's a muad for a person, they're not muad to behema. I amrit bishloma ain't a muad tanan. If you're saying you're going to learn it the way I, Rav Papa, learn it, which is to say a halacha, that someone is a muad lo adam is not a muad lo behema. Stama lo have a muad, but it's coming to tell you that, so therefore it's coming to tell you that in the ordinary course, we don't assume that just because someone's a muad for a person that he's a muad for a behema. HaKamash malan. So this is teaching us that filu me adam lo behema nami stama lo have a muad. It's coming to tell us a chiddush, which is saying that even though that even though you might think that this is different, and that if someone is found to be a muad for an adam, that maybe even though normally according to Rav Papa we don't assume just because he's a muad for one thing he's a muad for another, but in this case I might have thought that if someone's a muad for a person, since it's such a higher bar to be a muad for a person, that he's also automatically a muad for a behema, and that would be the havamin according to Rav Papa. Kamash malan, that no, my rule, Rav Papa is saying, is absolute. It doesn't matter if you're found to be a muad for one, even if it's a person, you're not assumed to be a muad for anything else, including an animal. So that Rav Papa says works well according to me. But if you're going to tell me that the Mishnah's words are ve'ena muad, and therefore it has to be where it's been demonstrated. So therefore it has to be a case in order to be not muad. It has to be a case where he's seen human beings and gored them. He's seen animals and not gored them. So he's demonstrated himself not to be a muad for behemoths. Hastama have a muad, but in the ordinary course, if he wouldn't have demonstrated that it's not a muad for behemoth, we would consider it a muad. Hasha yeshlam behema behema stama have a muad. Me adam behema tzricha lemeimer to have a muad. He says, what would be the chiddush of the Mishnah? Because if we know that even from one type of animal to another, he's assumed to be a muad. That if he's a muad for this type of animal, he's a muad for any type of animal. So then, for sure, if he's a muad for a person, he's going to be a muad for behemoth. So why did the Mishnah need to tell us anything? And so Rav Papa is saying, according to me, there's a chiddush to say that it still doesn't transfer. Even though you might say that it should, for sure, if he's muad l'adam, he should be muad l'behemoth. Rav Papa is saying it's still not true and it does not carry over. He's innocent until proven guilty. But according to Rav Papa, according to Rav Zvid, what chiddush is the Mishnah telling us? If we already know that when he's muad for one type of behemoth, he's not muad, he's automatically muad for any other type of behemoth. For sure, if he's muad for Adam, he should be muad for behemoth. So that's Rav Papa's raya. Rav Zvid Amalecha, how would Rav Zvid answer? He would say Reisha Chazara Kai. That this case of muad la'adam ve'ena muad le'behema is not talking about a regular case of what we've been talking about, because you're right, then there would be no chiddush, because once I know from one type to another type, you assume that the muad transfers, then for sure it transfers from a human being to an animal. So what is the Mishnah saying in this case? It's talking about chazara. Chazara is the process by which a muad ceases to be a muad and becomes a tam again. So he says, here's the case. You had an animal that was muad for man, he was muad for behemoth, he had gored 3 men, he had gored 3 behemoths, he's just an angry ox. Now he retracted from being a muad for behemoth. And how do we know that he's no longer a muad for behemoth? Because 3 times it saw a behemoth and he didn't gore. So mahu the tema, I might have thought, kivan delay hadar be me adam chazar the behema lav chazara he. So he's saying it's as follows. So we're saying he became a muad for man and for animal. Then he ceased becoming a muad for animal. I might have thought that his ceasing to become a muad for animal doesn't help. Why? Because he's still muad for a person, and if he's muad for a person, if he's gonna gore a person, he's gonna for sure gore an animal. So maybe he should still be considered muad for an animal. Kamash malan, the chazar the behema mia chazarahi. That no, at the end of the day, if he was chazer from goring behemoths, and 3 times you showed him a behemoth and he didn't gore, he remains a muad for a person, but he is not a muad for a behemoth. So again, the kasher of Papa had on Rav Zvid was the Mishnah has no point. There's no chiddush according to you. He's saying no, it has a chiddush if you understand it to be talking about a case of chazara, to tell you that we allow it to cease being a muad for behemoths, even though it's still a muad for Adam. Okay, Meisvei, I'll ask you a kasha. Sumchas Omer, Sumchas says, muad la'adam, muad lebehema, mikal v'chomer. That he says, I can learn, and we're going to see the context of this. Sumchas says, I could learn a kal v'chomer, that if a person is muad to attack people, then he's for sure muad to attack a behema. Umala adam muad lebehema lo kol shekain. Because he's saying, if an animal is prepared to attack a person, which is much harder, he would for sure attack a behema. So this is Sumchas' opinion. So now the Gemara says, whoever Sumchas is arguing with, Mechlal the Tanakama, that the Tanakama of Sumchas disagreed, would say, Eino muad ka'amar, right? That this animal is not a muad. In other words, that only Sumchas, who learns a kal v'chomer, would say that if he's a muad for a person, he's automatically a muad for a behema. If the Tanakama does not hold of that, then the Tanakama is saying that just because he's a muad for a person does not mean that he's a muad for a behema, right? So therefore, who is it that says that in the ordinary course we don't assume muad from one to the other? That would be Rav Papa. So this Tanakama of Sumchus is a kasha on Reb Zvid, because Reb Zvid would say, of course, if you're a muad la'adam, you're for sure muad lebehema, just like if you're a muad for one kind of animal, you're muad for all kinds of animals. So it's a kasha on Reb Zvid. Reb Zvid would say to you, Sumchus asara chazara kai. That again, Sumchus, similar to what we just said, is talking about retracting from being a muad. V'hachi kamalei l'tanakama. And this is what Sumchus was saying to the Tanakama. Lidaka amrit chazar debehema chazara he. To this that you said that someone can be chozer from being a muad lebehema in a case where he was muad la'adam and muad lebehema, and he's retracted from being a muad lebehema. This that you said that's a valid retraction. Chazar debehema lav chazar he. I'm going to tell you that that's not true, and you cannot assume that just because he hasn't gored 3 animals that he's now no longer a muad for animals. Why? Mikal v'chomer mi adam, because I'll tell you kal v'chomer from adam. Umame adam like kamahader be mi behema lo kol shekain. Because if we're saying he's still a muad for adam because he became a muad first for man and behema, and then he retracted only from behema. So Rameir is saying Sumchus is saying in that case I have a kal v'chomer. You cannot tell me that he could be chozer from being a muad only as relates to animals while remaining a muad as relates to man, because if he's going to gore a man, he's going to for sure gore a behema, and therefore the chazara is not a good chazara. So in any event, Sumchus and his Tanakama, according to Zvid, are arguing about a case of chazara. They're not arguing about a regular case, and therefore you cannot say that Sumchus' Tanakama would say that just because you're a muad for a person does not mean you're a muad for a behema, which would be Rav Papa's point. Rav Zvid says that's not what they're talking about at all. Okay? So now we're going to have 2 cases in a row that ask kashas on Rav Papa. Rav Ashi says as follows. Tashma coming here. Amru lefnei Rabbi Yehuda, harei zamur l'Shabbos ve'enu mur l'yimos hachol. So remember, our Mishnah brought a case. The Talmidim came to Rabbi Yehuda, and they said, we have a behema here that is muad to gore on Shabbos, and it is not muad to gore on the weekday. Amr lahen, and Rabbi Yehuda answered them, l'Shabbos m'shalom nezek shalom. Now for Shabbos, he pays back nezek shalom. V'yimos hachol m'shalom chatzi nezek. That for the weekdays, he would only pay chatzi nezek. So now, why is this a raya? It works well if you say like Reb Zvid ve'ena muad katani, that it was telling us a factual pattern. This behema had been found to gore on Shabbos, but when they brought animals in front of it on the weekday, it did not gore, right? So it's a factual pattern. Then shiulo hu dekam shailile. They were asking him a shaila. They were saying, we have this behema, gores on Shabbos, doesn't gore on the weekday. What's the halacha? V'hu nami kamahadar lahu. And he answered them and says, Einachinami, that animal is only muad for Shabbos and he's not muad for the weekday. That's how we read the Mishnah. It makes perfect sense. Ela I amrit eino muad katani. If you're going to say that every time we learned in the Mishnah was eino muad was telling us a psak, agmuri Yehuda kama gamri le, were they telling Rabbi Yehuda a halacha? These were his talmidim. So how would it read? So we look at the Mishnah, it would say that they said in front of Rabbi Yehuda, if you have an animal that's muad the Shabbosos, the halacha is it's not muad for chol, right? So what? They're telling their Rabbi Yehuda halacha? That's how we're going to read it. V'su, and furthermore, iu mai kama hadar lahu. What did he answer them? He answered them the exact same thing, because if you're reading it this way, it would say that they came in front of Rabbi Yehuda and they told Rabbi Yehuda halacha that if an animal is muad for Shabbos, then it's not muad for the chol, right? So, and to which Rabbi Yehuda said back to them, L'Shabbos mishalem nezek shalom, imos achol mishalem chatzi nezek. So he's saying, to which he responded that for Shabbos it pays nezek shalom, and for weekdays it pays chatzi nezek. Is it possible that if they already told him the halacha that this animal's a muad and this animal's a muad for Shabbos and it's a tam for a weekday, Rabbi Yehuda needed to answer them and tell them that the halacha is nezek shalom and chatzi nezek? That's ridiculous. Everyone knows that. So that's.
We didn't see this distinction yet in the time. We've already seen the different minim.
No, you're right. So that's why, according to...
It still would be appropriate to ask the Shiloh if the distinction applies.
Exactly. So that's the point. They're saying, according to Rabbi Zvid, it comes out well, because the Talmidim were bringing a case. It's muad for Shabbos, not muad for the weekday. What's the halacha? To which he responded, you're right, it is muad for Shabbos, so to your point exactly, time matters, right? So that's good, according to Rabbi Zvid. According to Rav Papa, who understands that each time it says, Eino muad, it's giving a psak, it's not giving a case. So it means they came to Rabbi Yehuda and they told him a halacha. The halacha is muad l'Shabbos, not muad l'chol, right? To which he responded, nezek shalom chati nezek. The whole conversation doesn't make sense. First of all, his talmidim wouldn't come and teach him a halacha, A, and B, if they were, what did he add to the conversation by just saying chati nezek and nezek shalom? Everyone knows that. So that's the whole point. That's why it's a kasha on Rav Papa, because it makes perfect sense according to Rav Zvid. According to Rav Papa, the conversation doesn't make sense. Okay, so that's kasha number one on Rav Papa. Next, Rav Yanai. Rav Yanai says, "Mereisha nami deka," that you can make a diuk also from the reisha like Rav Zvid. The ketani, because we learned eshe muad lo mishalim nezek shalom ve'eshe ena muad lo mishalim chatzi nezek. So let's just remind ourselves. According to Rav Zvid's understanding, the Mishnah brought three cases. It's muad for its min, but it's not muad for its eno min. It's muad for ketanim, it's not muad for gedolim. It's muad for person, it's not muad for behemoth. To that, the Mishnah came and said, that the halacha in those cases where you seem to have muad for one and tam for another, the halacha is enachinami. It's muad for that and pay nezek shalom, and he pays chatzi nezek for the others. So if they were giving us three cases, perusha Kamma farishla. So then it was coming. The purpose of this Mishnah was coming to tell us. Actually, the way Rashi explains is, as we've discussed, everything to do with this Mishnah has to do with the implication. The question of, in the ordinary course, do we assume that an animal becomes muad for one thing and becomes muad for other? So in other words, it was giving us three cases, and then it's telling us a halacha from which we can ascertain that only in these cases where it's been demonstrated that it's not a muad for the second category, it's not a muad, but in the ordinary course it would be a muad. So it's good. We bring three cases, and then we bring a halacha that tells us that. So that all works. If you're saying that these aren't cases, but rather they're psakim, they're halachas, paska mai. Like what kind of, what did you, Pascha, I'm sorry. But if you're saying it said enamoid, Pascha, it's given a psak. So then, my su, eshemud la mishalim nezek shalom, eshenamud la mishalim chatzi nezek. He's saying, then what are you adding when you say afterwards that the one that's muad pays nezek shalom and the one that's not muad pays chatzi nezek? Ad hashalosh minon da tam mishalim chatzi nezek, muad mishalim nezek shalom. So he's saying, I wouldn't have known this. In other words, because of what, according to Rav Papa, the way we're understanding this Mishnah is it's saying a halacha. If you're muad lemino, you're not muad l'shein mino. If you're muad for ketanim, you're not muad for gedolim. If you're muad for a person, you're not muad for an animal. And then it says, and if you're muad, you pay nezek shalom, and if you're a tam, you pay chatzi nezek. I didn't need the Mishnah to tell me that. Everyone knows that. So if you understand it that the first three were cases and this is the psak, it makes sense. But if the first three were psakim, then what are you adding here? So therefore, it's also a kasha on Rav Papa. Now, ironically, so the Gemara continues, says, "V'imtim silamar nami isul Rav Papa." But even if you're going to say that Rav Papa is right in some fashion, Rav Papa agrees that nagach shar chamar v'gamol nasamuad l'kol. That if he goes ahead and gores a shar and a donkey and a camel, he's a muad for all animals. You don't say he has to do each of these three times to be mechuyever, because once he's demonstrated that he's really an equal opportunity gorer, then he becomes a muad for all things. So ironically, the way you would, this is a strange Gemara, because the Gemara asks two kashas on Rav Papa, and then it says, and if you still want to say like Rav Papa, you Rav Papa would say this. It would seem we disproved Rav Papa. The Rishonim go all over the place with this, and this is very relevant. We're not going to have time to get into the detail, but we're going to see many cases that seem to paskin like Rav Papa, And the fact that the Gemara concerns itself with Rav Papa's view is many of the poskim understand that the psak is actually like Rav Papa, even though he asked these kashas. So presumably there was some answer. We don't have time to get into it in detail, but it's very interesting how the remaining Gemaras play out with that question. Okay, Tana Rabbanan, Ra'a Shar Nogach, Shar Lo Nogach, Shar Nogach, Shar Lo Nogach, Shar Nogach, Shar Lo Nogach, Nasa Mu'ad L'Seirugin L'Shvarim. So he says as follows. Animal saw a shar, he gored him. Then he didn't gore one. Then he did gore, then he didn't, then he did, then he didn't. So what happened is that he became a muad to gore every other shar. Okay? So that's how it works. Fine. Tana Rabbanan, Ra'a shar nagach, chamar lo nagach, sus nagach, gamal lo nagach, parad nagach, arid lo nagach. So what happened here? He saw a shar, he gored it. He saw a donkey, he didn't gore it. He saw a horse, he gored it. He saw a camel, he didn't gore it. He saw a mule, he gored it. He saw arud, Rashi says is a chamor heber, a wild donkey. Lo nagach, he didn't gore it. Nasa muad l'seirugin lakol. So he becomes a muad for all animals, but only alternating. What?
They were seen in order?
He saw 6 animals, 3 of them he gored, 3 he didn't. So we're saying the halacha is, as we just learned before, that if he gores 3 types of animals, he becomes a muad for all animals. So we say he does become a muad for all animals, but only if he didn't gore the last animal. If he gored the last animal, then he's scheduled to take a break, and then he would only pay chati nezer. Okay, so Ibayilahu. The Gemara asks a question. Nagach on the base. Nagach shar. He gored 3 shars in a row. Chamor, then a donkey, then a gamal, and then a camel. So he gored 5 animals here. So mahu, what's the halacha? Hai shor basra. This last shor, meaning the 3rd animal he gored. Basar shvarim shadinan le vakati l'shvarim huda ayid. That do we say that we lump it together with the first 2 sharos, and therefore he is muad for shvarim lemidi achrini lo iyayid, but he's not a muad for other types of animals. Odilma haishar basar basar chamar v'gamal shadinan le ve'ayid le lekulo. Or maybe you say that this 3rd animal, the 3rd shar, gets lumped together with the chamar and the gamal, and we say he's a muad for every. Ve'ayid le lekule mini. That he's a muad for all animals. What's this about? We know if an animal gores 3 shars in a row, so he's a muad for sharas, right? Now this might sound like Rav Papa, but it can be explained even according to Rav Zvid. But in other words, the point is we know that he's a muad for 3 sharas in a row, but we know that if he would attack 3 different types of animals, he would be muad for all animals. So the question here is as follows: he did shar. So maybe you say he's a muad for a shar, he's not a muad for anything else. And therefore, when he gores a camel or he gores a donkey, he only pays chatzi nezek because he wasn't proven to be a muad for a chamar or gamal or all types of animals. It was only proven to be a muad for a shar. Or do we say that we look at the 3rd shar as being with the 4th and 5th, and therefore if you look at that sequence, you have shar, chamar, gamal, and therefore you've seen that he's gored 3 different types of animals 3 times in a row, and then we just learned the halacha that in that case he's a muad for everything. So the way it's explained is as follows. The Gemara is asking, I might think that you should lump the 3 sharas together. Why? Because first of all, those are the first 3 animals he gored, and second of all, they're of the same variety. So I might think it goes together. Or do you say, look, at the end of the day, we want to make him a muad because he's shown himself to gore a shor, a chamar, and a gamal. So we should say he's muad for all animals. So what do we do? Now the Gemara says, here's another case, chamar, we're going to reverse the order. Chamar v'gamal shar. So even if you're going to tell me that we go after the shoros because we figure that he should be together with others of its own variety, right? And because the first 3 that he gored were shor, so we say it goes after shor. What happens if the order is reversed? So he goes chamor, gamal, shor, and then it's shor and shor. So mahu, what's halacha? Hai shor kamma, this first shor, meaning which is the 3rd animal that he gores, basa chamar v'gamal shadinan lei. Do we lump it together with animals number 1 and 2, ve'ayid lei lekulo mini, and therefore he would be a muad for all types of animals because we look at it as saying he did a donkey, a camel, and a shor, so he's a muad for all types of animals. Odilmo basa shvarim shadinan lei. Or do we lump him together with the sharos and we say that it's only for Shoros that he is a muad, and he is not a muad for other types of animals. So similar inquiry, but we might think that in this case, you still have the element that you might lump it together with its own variety, which would make him a muad only for Shor, but you lost the element of the first animals that are gored were the variety of 3. Okay? Now the Gemara continues with a new question. Shabbos, Shabbos, Shabbos. Shabbos, Shabbos, v'Shabbos. Echad b'Shabbos, v'Sheni b'Shabbos. So he gored 1 week Shabbos, next week Shabbos, next week Shabbos, Sunday, Monday. So, Mahu, what's halacha? Ha Shabbos, Basraisa, Basar Shabbos, Huda Shadinon Le. Do we say that this third goring on Shabbos goes together with goring number 1 and 2 where he gored on Shabbos? V'akati l'Shabbos, Huda Ayed l'Moisachol Ayed, and therefore he becomes a muad only for Shabbos but not for the weekdays. O Dilmor, maybe I'll say Basar Echad b'Shabbos, v'Sheni b'Shabbos Shadinon Le, that we lump the third goring on Shabbos together with Sunday and Monday. V'ayed l'Kule Yumo. And therefore, he would be muad for all of the days. Now, what is it adding here that we didn't have before? In other words, why isn't this the same question that we asked about Shor, Chamor, V'Gamol? Because when an animal only gores on Shabbos, its gorings are obviously separated by a week. So you might think that there's less of a reason to lump the 3 shoras together just because they're of the same type, because those gorings are actually far removed from each other, versus when the latter 3 gorings are Shabbos, Sunday, Monday. So you might think that. Now the Gemara continues and says, and same thing as before. If you're going to tell me that you want to lump them together, A, because they're of similar variety, Shabbos, 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 and because those are the first 3 gorings, what if they're not the first 3? Hey, v'Shabbos, so he gored on Thursday, v'Erev Shabbos, and on a Friday, then v'Shabbos, then on Shabbos, then a week later Shabbos, and a week later v'Shabbos. So he did, the first 3 were Thursday, Friday, Shabbos, so do you go after the first 3, or do you say that since the 3 are on Shabbos, you go after ones that are its own type? Mahu, what's the halacha? Ha Shabbos kamaisa basar hey v'Shabbos v'Erev Shabbos shadin lei. Do we say that the third goring, which is on Shabbos, follows Thursday and Friday? V'ayed lekule yuma, and therefore he's a muad for all days. Or dilma ha Shabbos kamaisa basar Shabbos shadin lei. Or do we say that this first Shabbos, which is the third goring, goes after the 4th and 5th, which were on Shabbos, and therefore he's muad only for Shabbos, but not for all days, which is what you would conclude if you say Thursday, Friday, Shabbos. So to all of these questions, the Gemara says, Teiko. Okay. Nagach shar yom tesva b'chodesh zeh, v'yom tezayim b'chodesh zeh, v'yom yud zayim b'chodesh zeh. So he gored on the 15th of this month, the 16th of the next month, and 17th of the next month. So for those who learn Hilchos Nida, this is very relevant for a vest, for a woman to, and we're going to see that in a minute. Plukta de Rav Shmuel. This halacha by negicha, by goring, would be the same as you have a machlokas between Rav and Shmuel and Nida, the itmar, because we learned. Rav yom tezvav b'chodesh zeh, yom tezayim b'chodesh zeh, yom yud zayim b'chodesh zeh. Rav amar kaval a vest. Rav says it's a vest. So Shmuel amar asher tishlush b'dilug, until you have 3 of the skipping. What's going on here? So we have a halacha in Hilchos Nida that if a woman establishes a pattern of when she becomes a nida, so this could take the form of the 22nd of each month she becomes a nida, or it could take the form that there's 4 weeks between the beginning of one period and another period. So then what's the significance of that? Rashi points out that there's a halacha, the chachamim were masakit, that if a woman becomes a nida, that anything she touched in the 24 hours preceding, we assume to be tamei, because maybe she had become a nida already and she just didn't realize, right? But if she is established to have a vest, and we know she comes on the 22nd of every month, she becomes a nida, so therefore the 24 hours preceding on the 21st, we don't have to worry that maybe she became a nida, because once it's established that she generally becomes a nida on the 22nd, we don't assume that this month it started somehow on the 21st, right? So, okay, how does this relate to the machlokes Rav and Shmuel? Because what we had here is we had the woman always got her, her nida became a nida on the 5th of the month. And all of a sudden, she switched the next month to the 15th, the next month the 16th, the next month the 17th. So Rav would say, so you see a pattern of 3 in a row here, right? So therefore, that becomes a vest, and we no longer have to worry about me'es la'es starting after the 3rd month, because you see a pattern of 3, 15, 16, 17. Shmuel says, no. Because what are you saying? You're saying that each time, what does she become a pattern of? She becomes a pattern that she always becomes a nida one day after the day of last month that she became a nida. But the first one, remember my case, she normally becomes a nida on the 5th. Now she becomes a nida on the 15th, right? So you don't have, the first one doesn't show that she became a nida a month and a day later than the last time, right? So therefore Shmuel says you need the fourth one. Okay, so that's a halacha by nida. We're saying it's the same halacha by shar. So if a shar gores on the 15th, 16th, and 17th, Rav would say at this point the animal's a muad going forward. Shmuel would say no, you need one more, because you need to show the first goring wasn't a month and a day after another goring. So the first goring doesn't count. That just starts the process. Then you need 2, 3, and 4, and Shmuel would say the 5th month you can become a muad on this schedule. Rava says, Shama kol shofar v'nagach, kol shofar v'nagach, kol shofar v'nagach, nasa muad l'shofara. So if you had an animal, someone blew a shofar, the animal went and gored someone. Shofar, gored. Shofar, gored. So you say it becomes a muad that whenever it's going to hear a shofar, it's going to be a muad, and therefore the owner should watch it. So the Gemara says, Pshita, that's obvious. So the Gemara says, Ma'adetei shofar kama siyuta ba'alma hu denakte kamashmalan. I might have thought that why did he gore the first time? Just because he got startled by the sound of a shofar. But that doesn't prove that he gores with a shofar. And so therefore I would think maybe you need a fourth case. So he says, no, that the Gemara is telling us that the three together get looked at together. Okay. Shar shel Yisrael, shenagach shar shel hektish. So this we actually encountered back when, I think on Daf Tes or so. That you had a shar of a Jewish person that gored a shar of hektish. V'shel hektish shenagach shar shel hedyet. Or she had hektish, a hektish shar gored a regular person shar, pater. In that case, hektish doesn't pay and the person doesn't pay. And we encountered this before. Shenemer shar re'eu v'lo shar shel hektish. Because the pasuk by Shar Tam says that Kiyigov Shar Ish a Shar Re'ehu, right? So it says that if the shar of a person gores the shar of his friend, right? So when are you chayav for damage? When you damage your friend's shar. Now, hektish is not your friend, so therefore hektish is not relevant to the halachas of goring according to the Mishnah. If you had a shar that belonged to a Jew that gored a shar of a Kenani, pater, the Jew does not have to pay the Kenani, and we'll see the case for this tomorrow. But conversely, if the shar of a Kenani gores the shar of Yisrael, bein tam bein muad, mishalim nezek shalom, he pays nezek shalom no matter what. So we'll talk about that tomorrow, why that's so. Okay, the Gemara says, Masnisin the like Reb Shimon ben Menasio. The Mishnah that we just learned is not like Reb Shimon ben Menasio. How do we know that? This Tanya, because we learned in a brisa, the first part of the brisa is going to be the same as our Mishnah. Shar shel hedyet shenagach shar shel hektish. If you have a regular person shar, gore the shar of hektish. V'shel hektish shenagach shar shel hedyet. Or you had a hektish shar that gored a regular person shar pater, that they're each pater. Why? Shenemer shar re'eu v'lo shar shel hektish. Because the pasuk says you're only in this category of owing damages when you gore the shar of your friend, but not if you gore the shar of hektish. Reb Shimon ben Menasio says shar shel hektish shenagach shar shel hedyet pater. Einochinami, if hektish shar gores a person shar, hektish is pater. V'shel hedyet shenagach shar shel hektish bein tam bein muad mishalim nezek shalom. So he's saying, but if a shar of a regular person damages a shar of hektish, he has to pay nezek shalom. He doesn't even get chatzi nezek the first 3 times. So the Gemara says, Amri, as I said, Micah sav Reb Shimon. Where does Reb Shimon ben Menasio get this idea? If we look at the word in the pasuk that says it has to be your friend and say it literally has to be your friend, then friend is a friend and hektish is not your friend. So then even if the regular person's animal gores an animal of hektish, he should be pater. If you're telling me, it says re'eu, but it doesn't really mean re'eu, it means even hektish, then afilu the hektish nami ki nagach the hedyet l'chayev. Then the same thing should be true, that when hektish animal gores a regular person's animal, he should be chayev. Now the Gemara, so we're struggling to understand where does Reb Shimon ben Menasio get this idea that a person is chayev if it damages hektish, but hektish is not chayev if it damages a person. And it doesn't make sense. Do you take re'eu seriously or you don't? So the Gemara says, and if you're going to tell me olam kasav re'eu dafka, really he holds that the pasuk it has to be your friend, and therefore whether your shar gores hektish or hektish gores your shar, your pater, because it says re'eu, that's really the halacha. Umiyu, Reb Shimon ben Menasio was saying the hedyet ki nagach the hektish hainu tam de mechayev. So then the question would be, why when the hedyet damages that one of hektish, why do you Reb Shimon ben Menasio say you have to pay nezek shalom? Mishum de kamaisi lemi kavachomer the hedyet. because really the halach is you should be pater. But there's a kavachomer that comes and says, Ma hedya shenaga chazeh shel hedyet chayev, that if when you damage a regular person, sure you have to pay him, kinaga the hegdish al kol shekain, then hegdish is in a better position than a person. Than if you gore of hegdish, of course you should pay. So what we're saying is as follows: maybe reyehu is dafka, and therefore you shouldn't have to pay hegdish. Hegdish shouldn't have to pay you. But we make a kavachomer specifically where you attack hegdish to say that look, if you attack your friend, you have to pay. So if you attack hegdish, you should for sure have to pay. The Gemara, lo kol shekain the mechayev. Are you not for sure chayev to pay? The Gemara says the problem with that, you can't explain that as Rav Shimon ben Nasi's reason, because dayad lov min adin lias kenidin. Because we learned this halacha before that if you're making a kavachomer, then if you're applying from the kal to the chomer, you have to apply it with whatever leniencies it has, and therefore mala halam tam chatzi nezek hachanami chatzi nezek. So he's saying, if you're going to say Reyehu is dafka, and therefore you're pater for hegdish, hegdish is pater for you, but we make a kavachomer from shor tam to say that just like if you damage your friend, you have to pay, so too you should have to pay hegdish. If we're learning that way, you should only have to pay hegdish where you have to pay your friend. What do you have to pay your friend? Chatzi nezek the first time. So why would Rav Shimon ben Nasi say in all cases, bein tam bein muad, you pay nezek shalem? That it would seem that you should only have to pay chatzi nezek. So we're left without an explanation of why Rav Shimon ben Asya says his halacha. It can't be the kavachomer, because then it would only be chatzi nezek, and he says it's nezek shalim. So therefore, we leave off with seeking a source for Rav Shimon ben Asya's halacha. Does he take Rayehu seriously, or doesn't he take it? Why does he say that the halacha is your chayav to hegdish, but hegdish is not chayav to you? And we'll leave that with a cliffhanger. Pick up with Mirza Shem tomorrow.